listeners and viewers. I'm here today with my dear friend, Dr. Gabrielle Francis. Just to give you a little bit of background, Dr. Gabrielle Francis is also known as the Urban Alchemist, Herban. Dr. Gabrielle Francis, the Urban Alchemist, has been practicing holistic medicine for over 35 years. She is a naturopathic doctor, chiropractor, acupuncturist, and massage therapist. In practice, Dr. Francis adheres to the philosophy and principles of naturopathic medicine, which include the healing power of nature, identify and treat the causes, first do no harm, doctor as teacher, treat the whole person, and prevention. Gabrielle received her formal medical training at National College of Chiropractic and at Bastyr University. She also has extensive training in alternative cancer therapies, environmental medicine, functional medicine, mind-body medicine, and bioidentical hormone therapies. Following her formal medical education, Dr. Francis traveled extensively to various parts of the world studying medicine with indigenous healers in countries such as China, India, Thailand, Bali, Brazil, Morocco, Peru, Guatemala, Ecuador, Belize, Mexico, Turkey, Greece, Syria, Lebanon, Indonesia, Malaysia, Egypt, and Mali. Gabrielle currently practices in New York City as the Urban Alchemist and operates Backstage Alternative, which provides natural medicine to rock and roll performing artists on tour. She's the author of The Rockstar Remedy, a rock and roll doctor's prescription for living a long, healthy life, published by HarperCollins in 2014. I'm just going to hold up my copy of the book, which I highly recommend.
Thank you.
Gabrielle and her husband Ahmed own Moroccan Elixir, a beauty product line which features argan oil from women's cooperatives in Morocco. She is an expert medical advisor for Veracity Skincare and Love Wellness. Welcome, Dr. Francis, or if I may call you Gabrielle, because as I said, we are friends. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Bob. It's so great to be here. Anytime to hang out with you is amazing time.
And likewise, wonderful to be with you. And I want our guests to get to know you a little bit and get to know a little bit about your personal journey. So when did you know that you wanted to be a healer?
I feel like when I was very young, even when I was around 5 years old, I kind of knew that I was going to be a doctor, and I was always playing with the stethoscope, massaging people. My father was really into natural medicine, and he would listen to tapes and I would listen with him. So I knew at a very young age, but I remember getting my first chiropractic treatment when I was 13 years old, and how life-changing that was, how I felt physically so amazing. And I was like, I want to do that for people. And so by the time I graduated from high school, I had decided to do chiropractic and started my massage training, and then went on to, do my pre-med from there.
And you did pre-med where?
I did my pre-med at Ohio State, and I got a bachelor's in human anatomy. And during that time, I was working as a massage therapist. And then I went on to chiropractic school at National College of Chiropractic in Chicago. And I did massage while I was in chiropractic school. And actually, when I was in massage school, I was only 18, and that opened the doors to so many other types of alternative medicine that were available. I didn't even know about naturopathic or acupuncture, and I learned about it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do all of them. And I started with chiropractic because chiropractic had the strongest license, and the training was such that if I did that first, the other courses, the courses from chiropractic would translate into the naturopathic and acupuncture program. So before I even started the whole journey, I knew I was going to do the chiropractic, naturopathic, and acupuncture.
Now, I
Yeah.
know you and I know enough about your journey to insert this question, because a lot of people who are in the medical field, I'm going to separate the medical field from the field of healing. There's an overlap, but one does not necessitate the other. So when did you put this together as a healing path as opposed to strictly a Western model of medicine as curative?
Well, when I was in, just before I went into chiropractic school, people were telling me, you should be a real doctor because you're so smart. You should be a real doctor. So I applied to Case Western Reserve. I got accepted, and I went for one semester. And I realized that this was not what I wanted to do because I saw how they broke up the person into all these individual categories, and everything was so reduced to specialties that nobody was really seeing the whole person. And that's when I knew that I just couldn't follow that kind of Western medicine path. And so I just decided to stay with what I was doing with the chiropractic, naturopathic, and acupuncture. And all of those programs, what's so special about them is even though you're getting the science and a lot of Western philosophies, you're really, there's this real focus on physician heal thyself and how you have to actually have many of these illnesses, go through the treatments yourself. And they all incorporate this concept of treating the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And that healing is more of a result of the relationship between the practitioner and the patient. And it's just so much deeper than, the science and the studies and things like that.
Wonderful. And those are themes that you and I will pick up on during the subsequent recording as well. So let's go through let's connect the dots between your formal training and then all of these other excursions that you made to what is like an amazingly long list of the places where you went to study indigenous healing. So let's start with the formal Western training and then make our transition to that.
Okay.
So you finished grad school. That's where we left off, and then you went on to chiropractic school.
Yeah, I did my undergraduate, then I went on to chiropractic school. Mm-hmm.
And from chiropractic school, what was next?
I went to Bastyr University in Seattle, and I did a combined program of naturopathic medicine and acupuncture combined. And while I was doing that, I was working as a chiropractor. I had my own practice. I was busy.
I guess so. And then when did these trips around the world come in?
Well, believe it or not, I really didn't travel internationally until I finished all of that education. I was traveling a lot locally in the United States and really kind of immersed in the Native American world. But I was also working in the music business. So I started working in the music business when I was 18, doing massage for different rock bands. And then when I became a chiropractor, I started doing chiropractic and massage backstage for different rock bands when they would come in town. And so when I finished all of my formal training, I was in Seattle. I was totally burned out, 17 years of medical school. And I was like, I am so tired and so burned out. I don't think I even want to be a doctor anymore. I was physically sick. I think I was emotionally really, really drained. So I decided I'm going to take a sabbatical and I'm going to go to Europe and get my life, sort my senses out and see if this is really what I want to do, which was very distressing at the time to think that I went through all that school and I didn't know if I wanted to be a doctor anymore. But when I went to Europe, I was doing little pilgrimages. So my first place I went was Thich Nhat Hanh's Plum Village in the south of France. And I did the Camino in the north of Spain, El Camino de Santiago de Compostela. And I followed different pilgrimage paths all around Europe. And it was on there that I really saw that healing was really what I wanted to do. But I wasn't really done traveling yet, but I really started to feel that in my bones, I'm a doctor. I need to be working with people, helping people. And about at that time, I was about 8 months in, one of the managers that I used to work with called me and said, I'm coming to town with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and how would you like to get paid to travel? We want somebody to go on tour with us. And so I said, oh, sounds great. So I had never really toured before. I always just worked backstage. So I ended up starting that tour. And what was going to be a 1-year sabbatical turned into 15 years of touring with different bands, working as their doctor on tour. And when they weren't on tour, I had these breaks in between, and I decided to start traveling abroad because I didn't really have a home base. So I started to go to different countries and kind of immerse myself in those cultures and study the healing with those healers. And that I spent many years doing that, touring and then international travel. And I really feel that's when I learned what healing is, because you're working with those ancient traditional methods and healers working in villages, and you're seeing how those systems that we've been practicing, you're seeing the origins of them.
So I seem to find 3 separate strains here to the story. The origin story that begins with you as a child having some desire to be involved in healing and whatever that would turn out to be, that led you to the Western style of education to get the degrees that you needed in order to be able to embark in on the medical field, which leads into you working with rock groups. And it's because of the lifestyle of the rock group, of working with these rock bands, that you had the time then to dedicate to going to other cultures and other countries in order to explore their indigenous healing systems. Do I have that right?
Yeah, that's very insightful. And I think of it now that you brought that up. My desire as a child, because I was the oldest child and my father was an alcoholic. So I think when you come into that kind of set role in life where you're already the helper and caretaker in the family, so that kind of set me off into wanting to help people, or that was my role in life. But interestingly enough, that I came from a family of addiction. I then went on to have my own personal addictions, and then I went on to work as a specialist with very big famous people with addictive lifestyles and personalities. And so I think that healing from the family of addiction and healing from my own addictions really helped me to be able to work in the music business. And that also helped me to kind of be able to work with normal people, because normal people live very intense, addictive, intense lifestyles. Whether they're addicted to a substance or not, we have a very extreme culture. And I think that I'm really good at working with people who live extreme lifestyles because I understand where they're coming from.
So take me through what it's like to work on tour with a rock band.
It's fun, and it can be a little bit crazy. And it evolved over time because it used to be a lot wilder. Now it's much more tame backstage, probably because they're getting a little bit older. But it's a 24-hour, 7 days a week kind of intensity. And I'm really helping the artists to kind of be as balanced as they can while they're traveling, while they're doing interviews, while they're touring, prepping for on stage. But I'm also working with the whole crew, the families, the girlfriends, anybody in the orbit was part of my care. So it was pretty intense. You ended up being their therapist, their doctor, their wife, their, baby
Mother.
mother. You have a lot of different roles. um, but it was really interesting because I saw that you could actually balance that extreme lifestyle and still be healthy, at least as healthy as you could. And I saw that there's this pendulum. There's what you do with them on tour and what you do when they're off tour. And on tour was like a lot of harm reduction, maintenance, keeping them as healthy as you can in the context of that lifestyle. Off tour was more like, this is now when we recover, we clean up, we get more balanced. And a lot of my patients live like this too, whether it's a business traveler that's traveling and then they're home, whether it's a mother with 4 kids that she's during the school year time and when they're on holiday time. Like, we all have that kind of normal balance that we want people to have isn't really how most people live nowadays. And so I feel like those tools I learned working with the artists were really helpful in helping me to understand patients and to be able to motivate them that despite not being perfect and living like a saint, they could still be healthy.
Well, let's go back to a day in the life. So, do you, like, if you were on tour with a band, do you have a formal schedule where you're going to meet with each band member for X number of minutes per day or per week? Or do they just come to you when they're having a problem?
So normally you're kind of living with them, you're either on a bus or the higher end ones would have planes. But for the most part, I would get up and I would help their team put together their smoothies and a healthy breakfast that had lots of protein, and then the shake had like all the nutrients in it that they needed for the day, because most of them don't like to eat in the morning. They're drinking coffee, some of them smoking cigarettes. So it's like, okay, get the smoothie in, sip on it slowly. You're either moving to the next destination or you're doing interviews, so you can't be having blood sugar crashes. You arrive into the city and they do sound check. And during sound check, I would be backstage kind of helping the artists get prepared for the show, doing acupuncture, massage, chiropractic if there were any injuries. So in the sound check time, I'm mostly working with the artists, getting them ready for the show, making sure that the spreads were pretty healthy and that they were eating and drinking enough water and prepped, and giving them herbal treatments for things that they might have special stuff going on, like constipation, a cold or flu, allergies, an injury. Then during the show, I actually sometimes needed to apply my first aid. I'm also an EMT, so there's times where I had to use my EMT services. But mostly during the show, I'm working on the wives, the kids, and the crew in back. And then after the show, sometimes an artist would want a treatment or they would want herbs to help them wind down. And because they get so amped up after a show, a lot of them have insomnia. So sometimes I would be doing massage after, acupuncture after, giving them remedies to help them calm down so that they can actually move into sleeping and moving on to the next city. And it was usually between cities on the road, either in the planes or in the buses, that I would consult with them one-on-one if they needed therapy or if they needed to just talk about a specific health problem. So as you can see, I didn't have a lot of personal time for myself during that time, but it was fun. It was fun.
So, I mean, when we think stereotypically about rock bands, especially a few years back, we think of a very extreme lifestyle. We think of maybe a self-abusive lifestyle. We think of, I mean, you mentioned the word addictions. So, I mean, I'm not inserting this. This is something that you mentioned. So, to what extent was it you trying to sort of patch them up and keep them functioning enough to do what they had to do?
Well, there was much more addiction in the early days of me starting. As the music business became more corporate, they would, if they saw somebody with an addiction, they would actually stop the tour and throw the person in rehab, because it can be so disruptive and everything is so timed and you have all these people working around it. So, you know, by the end of it, and even now, there's not that much addiction in artists anymore. If there is, it's a little bit more subtle. But in the beginning, you know, there was some wild stuff, and there was a lot of harm reduction, and there was a few times where I sat in on interventions to help people get into recovery. And I think just for me, having been through a lot of that stuff myself, people could be really honest to me about how they were using, and they knew that I wasn't going to judge them. But at the same time, when they were ready to get clean, I was there for them, and understanding of how to do it for them, with them, you know.
Well, this is a perfect time for us to end our first segment, where we're concluding with this part of your story, the rock and roll part of the story. We're going to move into the much more spiritual aspect of your journey with healers in indigenous cultures coming up next. So, Gabrielle, Dr. Gabrielle Francis, thank you so much for being on this first segment with me.
Thanks for inviting me, Bob. This has been so much fun.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.